The dust cloud rising from the horizon caught Ethan McGraw's attention long before he reached the weathered wooden fence marking the property line. He'd been riding for 3 days straight from Amarillo, following the hand-drawn map his late uncle had left him along with the deed to this piece of land. The October sun beat down mercilessly on his broad shoulders, and his throat felt as parched as the cracked earth beneath his horse's hooves. "Easy there, Duke," Ethan murmured to his chestnut stallion, patting the animal's sweaty neck. The horse whinnied softly. Sensing they were near journey's end, the inheritance had come as a surprise. Uncle Josiah McGraw hadn't been much for family gatherings, preferring the solitude of his ranch to the company of relatives. Yet, somehow, in his final will, he'd left everything to Ethan, his favorite nephew who'd spent summers helping him break horses and mend fences back when life seemed simpler. Ethan pulled the folded deed from his saddlebag, squinting at the formal script in the harsh light. The McGraw Ranch, comprising 160 acres of prime grazing land, including all structures, livestock, and improvements thereon. He'd read it a dozen times during the journey, but seeing the actual spread before him made it real. The main house sat on a gentle rise, its log walls silvered by years of sun and weather. Smoke drifted from the stone chimney, which struck Ethan as odd. According to the lawyer in Amarillo, Uncle Josiah had been dead for nearly 2 months. The place should have been abandoned. As he guided Duke through the gate, Ethan noticed other signs of habitation. The vegetable garden beside the house showed recent tending, with neat rows of corn stalks and squash vines. Fresh laundry flapped on a line strung between 2 posts. A few chickens pecked at the dirt near the barn, and he could hear the lowing of cattle from somewhere beyond the corrals. His hand instinctively moved to rest on the Colt .45 at his hip. In his experience, squatters rarely took kindly to being evicted, and he'd learned the hard way that a show of force often prevented bloodshed. Still, he hoped to handle this peacefully. The war had given him enough violence to last a lifetime, and all he wanted now was a quiet place to build something worthwhile. The front door of the house stood slightly ajar, revealing glimpses of the dim interior. Ethan dismounted, wrapping Duke's reins around the hitching post. His spurs jingled softly as he climbed the wooden steps, each creak announcing his presence. "Hello in the house," he called out, his deep voice carrying across the dusty yard. "Name's Ethan McGraw. I'm here on legal business regarding this property." No response came from within, but he caught the faint scent of baking bread and coffee homey smells that seemed at odds with the tension crackling in the air. He pushed the door open wider, his eyes adjusting to the shadows inside. The main room was larger than he'd expected, dominated by a massive stone fireplace. Handmade furniture filled the space, a rough-hewn table, several chairs, a rocking chair near the hearth. Everything spoke of practical comfort rather than luxury. What caught his attention most, however, were the feminine touches scattered throughout: embroidered cushions, wildflowers in a mason jar, delicate curtains framing the windows. "You lost, mister?" The voice came from his left, sharp as a whip crack. Ethan turned to find himself staring down the barrel of a Winchester rifle. The woman holding it couldn't have been older than 25, with sun-kissed skin and eyes the color of storm clouds. Her calico dress was practical rather than pretty, and she held the weapon with the easy confidence of someone who knew how to use it. "No, ma'am," Ethan replied, keeping his hands visible and away from his pistol. "Like I said, I'm Ethan McGraw. This ranch belonged to my Uncle Josiah, and he left it to me in his will." "That's so." Another woman emerged from what appeared to be a bedroom, this one younger with honey-colored hair twisted into a braid. She carried a frying pan like a weapon, though her green eyes held more curiosity than hostility. Josiah never mentioned any nephew. "He mentioned plenty of things," added a third voice. A redhead stepped through the back door, wiping her hands on an apron. Flour dusted her freckled cheeks, explaining the bread smell. "Just not anything about leaving this place to some stranger." Ethan felt increasingly boxed in as a fourth woman appeared at the top of a ladder leading to what must be a loft. This one looked barely 18, with dark curls escaping from beneath a worn bonnet. Unlike the others, she seemed more frightened than defensive, her brown eyes wide as a startled deer's. "Ladies," Ethan said carefully, "I understand this is unexpected, but I have the legal documents right here." He slowly reached for the deed in his vest pocket, freezing when the rifle barrel lifted slightly. "Documents can be forged," the first woman said. Her gray eyes never left his face. "Wouldn't be the first time someone tried to steal land out here using fancy papers and lies. Clara, maybe we should hear him out," the honey-haired one suggested, though she didn't lower her frying pan. "Mary's too trusting," the redhead interjected. "Remember what happened the last time we believed a man with documents?" The youngest girl, she'd climbed down from the loft now, peered at Ethan with something between fear and fascination. "He does look like Josiah around the eyes," she whispered. Clara, apparently the one with the rifle, studied Ethan more closely. Could be coincidence. Plenty of men have brown eyes and square jaws. "I can prove who I am," Ethan offered. "There's a lawyer in Amarillo, name of Henderson. He handled my uncle's affairs. We can wire him if you'd like." "Amarillo's 3 days' ride," Mary pointed out. "What do we do with him in the meantime?" "I have a suggestion," Clara said, her voice hard as granite. "He turns around, gets back on that horse, and rides away. Forgets he ever heard of this place." Ethan shook his head slowly. "Can't do that, ma'am. This land is legally mine, and I've come a long way to claim it. Now, I'm not looking for trouble, but I won't be run off what's rightfully mine either." The redhead laughed, though there was no humor in it. "Rightfully yours. Where were you when Josiah was sick? When he needed help with the cattle? When raiders came through trying to steal everything that wasn't nailed down?" "Ruth's got a point," Mary added. "We're the ones who've been keeping this place running, because Josiah asked us to." The youngest one, who hadn't been named yet, said softly, "He said we'd be safe here." Ethan's brow furrowed. "Safe from what?" The women exchanged glances, a silent communication that spoke of shared secrets and hard-won trust. Finally, Clara lowered the rifle slightly, though she kept it ready. "Sit down. Mr. McGraw, Eliza, get him some water. He looks about ready to keel over." The youngest girl, Eliza, scurried to fetch a cup, while Ethan carefully took a seat at the table. The other women arranged themselves strategically around the room, never quite relaxing their guard. "Thank you," Ethan said when Eliza handed him the water. He drank deeply, grateful for the cool liquid after his long ride. Clara pulled out a chair across from him, laying the Winchester across her lap. "You want to know the truth? Fine, but you might not like what you hear. Try me." "We're not squatters," she began. "Josiah invited us here, gave us sanctuary when no one else would. Each of us had nowhere else to go, and he offered us a home in exchange for help keeping the ranch running." "Why would 4 young women need sanctuary?" Ethan asked, though he suspected he already knew part of the answer. The frontier was hard on everyone, but especially on women without the protection of family or husband. "That's our business," Ruth said sharply. "It becomes my business if you're staying on my land." Ethan countered. Mary sighed. "We're not outlaws, if that's what you're thinking. Just women who needed a fresh start." "Josiah understood that," Eliza added. "He never asked questions, never judged. Just said we could stay as long as we pulled our weight." Ethan studied each face in turn. Clara with her defensive strength, Mary with her cautious hope, Ruth with her barely contained anger, and young Eliza with her mixture of fear and determination. Whatever had driven them here, they'd clearly found something worth fighting for. "How long have you been here?" he asked. "Clara's been here longest, almost 2 years," Mary answered. "I came about 18 months ago. Ruth arrived last winter, and Eliza's only been with us since spring." "And my uncle was fine with this arrangement?" "More than fine," Clara said. "He said we reminded him of the daughters he never had, taught us to shoot, to ride, to work cattle, everything we'd need to survive out here." He used to say the land needed tending by people who understood what it meant to start over, Ruth added, her green eyes challenging him to dispute it. Ethan rubbed his jaw, feeling the stubble of 3 days on the trail. This wasn't what he'd expected to find. He'd imagined arriving at an empty ranch, maybe hiring a few hands, slowly building something of his own. Instead, he'd walked into a situation as complicated as a Gordian knot. "Show me the deed," Clara said suddenly. Ethan carefully pulled out the document, sliding it across the table. Clara read it slowly, her lips moving slightly with the words. The other women crowded around, peering over her shoulders. "It's real," Mary breathed. "The lawyer's seal, Josiah's signature." "Dated 6 weeks ago," Ruth noted. "Just before he took sick." Clara looked up at Ethan, her gray eyes unreadable. "So you are who you say you are. Question is, what happens now?" "That depends," Ethan said carefully, "on whether you're willing to be reasonable about this." "Reasonable?" Ruth's temper flared. "You mean pack up and leave? Just like that? After everything we've built here?" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" Clara interrupted. "Because from where we sit, you're a stranger laying claim to our home." Ethan was about to respond when Eliza spoke up, her young voice trembling slightly. What if we could work something out? Some kind of arrangement." "What kind of arrangement?" Ethan asked. The women looked at each other again, that wordless communication flowing between them. Finally. Clara stood, the rifle still cradled in her arms but no longer pointed at him. "Here's the thing, Mr. McGraw. This ranch is more than just land to us. It's safety. It's freedom. It's a chance at a life we couldn't have anywhere else. You want to take that away, you'll have a fight on your hands. But if you're willing to listen," Mary added quickly, "maybe we can find a solution that works for everyone." Ruth crossed her arms. "Though I don't see why we should compromise. We're the ones who kept this place going." "Because he has the law on his side," Clara said pragmatically. "And because Josiah must have had his reasons for leaving it to him." Ethan stood slowly, aware that sudden movements might restart hostilities. "Ladies, I came here looking for a new beginning, same as you. I've got no interest in throwing anyone out who's willing to work hard and deal straight. But this is my land now, legal and proper, and that's not negotiable." "Then, what is negotiable?" Clara asked. Before Ethan could answer, the sound of approaching horses made everyone tense. Clara moved swiftly to the window, peering out through the curtains. "Riders coming," she announced. 6 of them." The transformation was immediate. Ruth grabbed a rifle from beside the door. Mary pulled a pistol from beneath her apron. Even young Eliza produced a derringer from somewhere in her skirts. They moved with practiced efficiency, taking defensive positions. "Friends of yours?" Clara asked Ethan, suspicion sharp in her voice. "No, ma'am, I came alone." "Then we might have a problem," she said grimly, "because the only men who come out here in groups are the ones we've been trying to avoid. The ones you need sanctuary from," Ethan guessed. Clara's smile was bitter. "Among others, welcome to the McGraw Ranch, Mr. McGraw. Hope you're ready to fight for it." The riders were getting closer now, dust cloud growing larger. Ethan checked his Colt, then looked at the women who'd transformed from hostile strangers to fellow defenders in the space of a heartbeat. "Looks like that negotiation will have to wait," he said. "Looks like," Clara agreed. "But just so we're clear, when this is over, we're not going anywhere. You want this ranch? You'll have to take all of us with it. Pick one," Ruth added with a fierce grin. "No, you'll have us all." The words hung in the air as the riders approached. A promise or a threat? Ethan wasn't sure which, but as he took position beside the window, watching the armed women prepare to defend their home, he realized his simple plan for a quiet life had just become anything but simple. The first of the riders came into clear view, and Clara cursed under her breath. "It's Harlan Boone's men. They're early this month." "Who's Harlan Boone?" Ethan asked. "Someone you don't want to meet," Mary said tightly. "But looks like you're about to anyway." As the riders drew closer, Ethan McGraw understood that he'd inherited far more than just land and cattle. He'd inherited these women's fight, their secrets, and their determination to survive, whether he liked it or not. His new beginning was about to start with gunfire. The riders reined in their horses just beyond the front porch, dust swirling around them like smoke. The lead man, a wiry fellow with a scar running from his left eye to his jaw, surveyed the house with the calculating gaze of a predator. "Afternoon, ladies," he called out, touching the brim of his hat in mock courtesy. "Boss wants to know if you've reconsidered his offer." Clara stepped onto the porch, Winchester held casually but ready. "Tell Boone the answer's the same as last month, Garrett, and the month before that." Garrett's smile was unpleasant. "Now, Miss Clara, that ain't very neighborly. Mr. Boone's been more than patient." Patient? Ruth appeared in the doorway, her red hair catching the afternoon sun. "Is that what you call sending his dogs around here every few weeks?" "Careful with your words. Girl," another rider warned. "We're just here to talk business." Ethan watched from inside, assessing the situation. The 6 men were armed but hadn't drawn their weapons yet. They sat their horses with the easy confidence of men used to intimidating others. Through the window, he could see 2 more riders hanging back near the barn, scouts or reinforcements. He couldn't tell which. "Who's that with you?" Garrett's sharp eyes had spotted movement inside. "You ladies taking in boarders now?" "None of your business," Clara replied evenly. "Everything on this ranch is Mr. Boone's business," Garrett said, "especially seeing as how it's going to be his property soon enough." Mary moved to stand beside Clara, her honey-colored braids swaying as she walked. This land belonged to Josiah McGraw, and he made his wishes clear before he died. "Yeah, about that." Garrett leaned forward in his saddle. "Funny thing, the old man dying so sudden-like, and now you've got some stranger in there? Makes a man wonder." Ethan had heard enough. He stepped out onto the porch, his hand resting on his Colt. The riders tensed, several hands drifting toward their own weapons. "Name's Ethan McGraw," he announced. "Josiah was my uncle, and this ranch is mine now." Garrett's scarred face split into a grin. Well, the nephew from back east? Boone's gonna want to hear about this. Then Boone can come talk to me himself." Ethan said, "In the meantime, you men are trespassing. I'll ask you to move along." "Trespassing?" One of the other riders, a heavy-set man with tobacco-stained teeth, laughed. "Boy, you don't know how things work around here. Then educate me," Ethan challenged. Garrett's grin faded. "Simple. Harlan Boone runs this county. Has for years. Your uncle was the only one stubborn enough to hold out against him. And look where that got him. You threatening me? Just stating facts." Garrett's eyes flicked to the women. "Course, Boone's interest ain't just in the land. He's got a particular fondness for collecting pretty things." The implication hung in the air like a bad smell. Ethan felt the women tense behind him, and his own jaw clenched. "And any man who thinks of women as things to be collected isn't worth the powder to blow him to hell," Ethan said quietly. "Big talk from a man outnumbered 8-1. The tobacco-chewing rider sneered. "Your math's off," Clara said, stepping up beside Ethan. "It's 8-5. Since when do women count in a fight?" Another rider scoffed. His answer came in the form of a rifle shot that knocked his hat clean off his head. Ruth lowered her smoking Winchester slightly. "Since we learned to shoot better than you." The riders' horses danced nervously, and hands went to guns, but Garrett held up a hand. "Easy, boys. No need for bloodshed. Yet." He looked at Ethan with new interest. "You sure you want to throw in with these wildcats? McGraw? Boone might be willing to make you a deal. Good money for the land. Safe passage out of the territory." "Not interested." "What about the girls?" Garrett pressed. "You planning to keep Josiah's little arrangement going? Man could get quite a reputation, living with 4 unmarried women." "Watch your mouth," Ethan warned. "Oh, I am. I'm watching everything." Garrett's eyes were cold as snake scales. See, Boone's been real patient on account of respecting old Josiah. But with him gone and you being a stranger and all, well, patience has its limits. Eliza appeared in the doorway, her young face pale but determined. You tell Harlan Boone that Josiah McGraw's wishes still stand. This is our home. Little Eliza. Garrett's voice turned oily. You've grown since spring. Boone's gonna be real interested to hear that. The derringer appeared in Eliza's hand so fast even Ethan was surprised. He comes near me again. He'll be interested in picking lead out of his hide. Again? Ethan's voice was dangerous. He's been here before. Oh, didn't they tell you? Garrett was enjoying himself now. Boone's got history with each of these ladies, especially young Eliza there. Her daddy owed Boone money, tried to settle the debt by... That's enough. Clara's voice cut like a whip. You've delivered your message. Now get off our land. Your land, Garrett laughed. For now, maybe, but Boone's offer won't stand forever. And when he's done being polite, he shrugged eloquently. We'll be ready. Ruth said. Will you? Garrett's gaze swept over them. 8 men today, maybe 12 tomorrow, maybe 20 next week. How long you think you can hold out? As long as it takes, Mary said quietly, but there was steel in her voice. Garrett turned his attention back to Ethan. Last chance, McGraw. Ride out now. Leave the women to sort their own problems. And Boone won't hold a grudge. Stay, and you're declaring yourself his enemy. If standing by these women makes me Boone's enemy, then so be it. Ethan said, Your funeral. Garrett wheeled his horse around. Boys, let's go. We'll be back. As the riders departed, kicking up dust, Clara turned to Ethan. You didn't have to do that. This isn't your fight. It is now, Ethan replied. This is my land, and you're under my protection. Your protection? Ruth's temper flared. We've been protecting ourselves just fine. Have you? Ethan gestured toward the dust cloud. Because from where I stand, looks like you're barely keeping them at bay. We've managed for months, Mary said defensively. Against scouts and threats. What happens when Boone stops playing games? The women exchanged glances. It was Eliza who spoke the truth they all knew. We die fighting. Or, Ethan said, we figure out a better way. They moved back inside, the atmosphere charged with tension and unspoken questions. Clara set her rifle against the wall and faced Ethan. Before we go any further, you need to know what you're stepping into. She said, each of us has reasons for being here. Reasons Boone thinks give him claim over us. I gathered as much from what Garrett said about Eliza's father. Eliza flinched, but lifted her chin. Papa borrowed money for seed and supplies. When the drought killed our crops, he couldn't pay. Boone said there were other ways to settle the debt. Papa tried to refuse, but she trailed off, her young face haunted. Josiah happened to be in town that day, Mary continued. He intervened, brought Eliza here before Boone could enforce his claim. And the rest of you? Ethan asked. Ruth's green eyes flashed. I worked in Boone's saloon, thought I was just serving drinks and keeping the peace. Found out he had other plans. Clara helped me escape one night when Boone was drunk. I was already here, Clara added. Josiah took me in after my husband died. Boone tried to comfort the grieving widow. Wouldn't take no for an answer. Your uncle made sure he kept his distance. Mary was quiet for a moment. I came from back east. Thought I was answering an advertisement for a school teacher. Turned out Boone had placed the ad to recruit women for his establishment. Josiah intercepted me at the stage depot, warned me off. So Boone sees you all as property that was stolen from him. Ethan summarized. We're nobody's property, Clara said fiercely. But yes, that's how he sees it. Ethan moved to the window, watching the horizon where the riders had disappeared. Tell me about Boone. What kind of man is he? Rich, powerful, owns half the county and has designs on the other half, Ruth said. Has maybe 30 men working for him, all gun hands and cowboys who don't ask questions. He's smart too, Mary added. Stays just inside the law, mostly. Uses legal tricks and intimidation rather than outright murder. Mostly, Clara emphasized. When that doesn't work, people disappear. Eliza whispered. Or have accidents. Ethan turned back to them. And my uncle stood up to him? Josiah was the only one Boone couldn't buy or frighten, Clara said. He had friends among the Texas Rangers, connections in Austin. Boone had to be careful. But now Josiah's gone, Ruth pointed out. And you're just some stranger from back east. Not from back east, Ethan corrected. I've been working cattle drives from Texas to Kansas for the past 5 years. Before that, I served with the Confederate cavalry. This revelation shifted something in the room. The women looked at him with new assessment. You've seen fighting, then, Clara said, more than I care to remember. This is different, Mary warned. This isn't about causes or countries. It's personal. Boone won't stop until he has what he wants. Then we make sure he can't have it. Ethan said simply. How? Eliza asked. We're 5 people against his 30. Numbers aren't everything. This ranch is defensible. Good sight lines, water access, sturdy buildings, and you've already proven you can shoot. You're talking about a siege, Clara realized. I'm talking about making it too costly for Boone to take what he wants. Ethan clarified. Men like him are businessmen at heart. If the price gets too high, he's not just a businessman. Ruth interrupted. He's prideful, vindictive. He takes challenges personally. Good. Angry men make mistakes. Clara studied him carefully. You're really planning to stay and fight? This is my land now, and despite our rough introduction, I can see why my uncle protected you. You've kept this place running, turned it into a home. I'm not about to throw that away. But you still want us to acknowledge your ownership, Ruth said suspiciously. I want us to work together, Ethan corrected. Legal ownership doesn't mean much if we're all dead. Mary moved to the stove, automatically checking the coffee pot. So, what are you proposing? First, we prepare for Boone's next move. Fortify the ranch, lay in supplies, maybe hire some extra hands if we can find men willing to stand against Boone. Good luck with that, Ruth muttered. Everyone in 3 counties is either working for him or scared of him. Then we make do with what we have. Ethan continued. Second, we figure out a living arrangement that works for everyone. Meaning what? Clara's tone was cautious. Meaning you stay on as partners, I suppose. You know this land. You've been working it. Makes no sense to change that. Partners, Eliza repeated, testing the word. Unless you have a better idea? The women looked at each other, conducting another of their silent conversations. Finally, Clara spoke. We need guarantees, written agreements. If something happens to you, we don't want to be left with nothing again. Fair enough. And we maintain our own spaces. This arrangement doesn't give you any expectations regarding us. Ethan's jaw tightened. I'm not Boone. Miss Clara, I don't see women as property or playthings. Words are easy, Ruth said. We'll judge by actions. Also fair. Mary poured coffee, the domestic gesture oddly calming in the tense atmosphere. There's something else you should know about Josiah's last days. The room grew quiet. Clara nodded at Mary to continue. He was worried. Said Boone was getting bolder, that something was coming. He spent his last week writing letters, making arrangements. The will, Ethan realized. He knew something might happen to him. He was sick, Eliza said softly. But the sickness came on sudden. Too sudden, some might say. The implication hung heavy. You think Boone poisoned him? Can't prove it. Clara said, but the timing was convenient. Right after Josiah refused Boone's last offer for the ranch. Anger, cold and familiar, settled in Ethan's chest. He'd come here seeking peace, but it seemed violence had followed him. Then we have more than just land to fight for, he said quietly. We have justice. Justice doesn't mean much out here, Ruth said bitterly. It does if we make it mean something. Clara stood, decision made. All right, Mr. McGraw. We'll try it your way, partners, for now. But if you betray us, if you turn out to be like other men who promise protection then demand payment, then you're free to shoot me yourself," Ethan finished. "I'll hold you to that," she said, extending her hand. They shook, her grip firm and calloused from ranch work. One by one, the other women stepped forward, Mary with cautious hope, Ruth with grudging acceptance, Eliza with shy determination. "Partners," Clara repeated. Then, with a ghost of a smile, "Though I still say if you're taking on our troubles, you're taking on all of us. Pick one? No, you'll have us all." "I'm beginning to understand what that means," Ethan said. Outside, the sun was beginning to set, painting the sky in shades of red and gold. Somewhere out there, Boone was getting Garrett's report, planning his next move, but inside the house that had become a fortress, 5 unlikely allies prepared to stand together against whatever came next. "We should post watches tonight," Ethan suggested. "They might try something in the dark." "Already planned on it." Clara said, "Welcome to the McGraw Ranch. Partner, hope you're ready for what comes next." As the women moved to prepare for the night ahead, Ethan realized his simple inheritance had become something far more complex. He'd wanted land and a new beginning. Instead, he'd found himself guardian to 4 remarkable women and heir to a fight against a man who saw human beings as possessions. But looking at the determined faces around him, he knew he'd made the right choice. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The evening meal was a quiet affair, punctuated by the scraping of forks against tin plates and the occasional pop from the fireplace. Ethan sat at the head of the table, Josiah's old place. Mary had informed him, feeling the weight of 4 pairs of eyes studying him when they thought he wasn't looking. "We should talk about the past," Clara finally said, setting down her coffee cup. "If you're going to fight alongside us, you need to understand what we're really facing." "I'm listening," Ethan replied. Clara rose and moved to the mantelpiece, where a tin-type photograph showed a younger Josiah standing beside a handsome woman. "Your uncle was a good man, better than most. When my husband Samuel died 3 years ago, I had nowhere to turn, no family, no money, just a pile of debts from his failed mining venture." She traced a finger along the photo's edge. "Harlan Boone appeared like a savior, offered to buy our small claim, pay off the debts. But the price he wanted..." Her voice hardened. "It wasn't just the land. Samuel had barely been in the ground a week," Ruth interjected, her green eyes flashing with remembered anger. "Boone figured a grieving widow would be grateful for any attention. When I refused him, he got insistent, started showing up at all hours, having his men follow me through town, said a woman alone needed protection, and he was willing to provide it for a price." "That's when Josiah stepped in?" Ethan guessed. Clara nodded. "He was in town buying supplies, saw Boone cornering me outside the general store. Your uncle didn't say much, just stepped between us and suggested Boone had business elsewhere." Boone backed down? "Not at first, but Josiah had a way about him. Quiet, but you knew he meant business. And he had friends, rangers who'd stop by for coffee, cavalry officers from the war. Boone was smart enough to recognize a fight he couldn't win." Mary picked up the thread. "Josiah offered Clara work here. Honest work, room and board, fair wages. No strings attached. She's been here ever since, helping run the place." 2 years, Clara confirmed. "The longest I've felt safe since Samuel died." Ethan absorbed this, then turned to Mary. "You mentioned coming from back east?" Mary's hands tightened around her cup. "Philadelphia, originally. My father was a doctor, wanted me to marry well, have children, host tea parties." A bitter smile touched her lips. "I wanted to teach, to make a difference. When I saw the advertisement for a teaching position in Texas, it seemed like an answer to prayers." "Boone's advertisement," Ruth said darkly. "I was naive," Mary admitted. "Thought the frontier would be different, that women would have more freedom here. The journey took all my savings. When I arrived in Sweetwater, there was no school waiting. Just Garrett and 2 other men with a wagon. Eliza reached over to squeeze Mary's hand. The gesture was simple, but spoke of shared understanding. They said the school was at a ranch outside town, that lodging was provided. I was tired, trusting, got in the wagon. Mary's voice grew quieter. About a mile out, I realized something was wrong, started asking questions. That's when they explained about Boone's finishing school, teaching women to be entertaining company for his saloon. How did you escape? Ethan asked. I didn't. Josiah did. Mary's smile became genuine. He was driving cattle through town, saw the wagon, recognized Garrett, rode up casual as could be. Asked if I was the new school teacher his friend in Austin had written about. Completely fabricated, but Garrett didn't know that. Your uncle spun this elaborate tale, Clara added with admiration. About expecting Mary for weeks, having the schoolhouse all ready. Even mentioned that her father, the federal judge, would be visiting soon to see her settled. Federal judge? Ethan couldn't help but smile. Garrett couldn't risk it. Mary explained. If there was even a chance I had those connections, Boone wouldn't thank him for bringing that kind of trouble. So they let Josiah take me. Ruth poured herself whiskey from a bottle she'd retrieved from a cabinet. My story's simpler. Worked Boone's saloon for 6 months before realizing what he really expected from his girls. Thought I could just serve drinks, maybe sing a little, but Boone had other ideas, and he wasn't patient about it. She took a long swallow. Clara was in town buying supplies, saw me trying to leave out the back while Boone's men blocked the front. She created a distraction, knocked over a lamp, started a small fire. In the confusion, we both got out. She showed up here half frozen. Clara remembered. Middle of winter, no coat, still wearing her saloon dress. Josiah took one look at her and said, "Well, better put another plate on the table." That was 8 months ago, Ruth said. Been learning to work cattle ever since. Turns out I'm better with horses than people anyway. All eyes turned to Eliza, the youngest. She squirmed under the attention but straightened her shoulders. Papa tried so hard, she began softly. After Mama died, he wanted to make a new start. The farm in Missouri was failing, and Texas seemed like the promised land. Free land for settlers, they said, fresh beginnings. But starting a farm takes money, Ethan said gently. Everything takes money. Seed, tools, lumber for the house. Papa was sure one good crop would set us right. Boone was happy to lend it. Said he liked helping newcomers. Eliza's young face hardened. 20% interest, compounded monthly. Papa couldn't read well, didn't understand the terms until too late. Debt bondage, Mary said with disgust. Boone's favorite trick. When Papa couldn't pay after the drought, Boone came calling, said there were other ways to settle accounts. Papa was going to take me to California, try to outrun the debt, but he got sick, real fast. Like Josiah, Ruth noted darkly. The doctor said it was fever, but Eliza shrugged. Josiah was visiting our neighbor, heard about Papa's troubles, came to check on us, found Papa dying and Boone's men already circling. He paid for Papa's burial, brought me here before Boone could claim his payment. That was 5 months ago, Clara added. She's been with us ever since. Ethan leaned back in his chair, processing these stories. Each woman had been targeted by Boone, saved by Josiah, and given sanctuary here. His uncle had been running an underground railroad of sorts, rescuing women from a predator who used law and intimidation as weapons. And Boone's just been patient about all this? He asked. Patient isn't the word I'd use. Ruth said, more like a cat playing with mice. He sends men by regular, makes offers, drops threats, testing our resolve. He was cautious of Josiah. Clara explained, your uncle had killed men in the war, rode with Terry's Rangers. Boone knew better than to push too hard. But now Josiah's gone, Mary said quietly, and our protection with him. No, Ethan said firmly. Your protection stands. This ranch stands. I gave my word. Words are wind, Ruth countered. What happens when Boone offers you money, or when his men have guns at our heads? Will your word matter then? Instead of answering immediately, Ethan stood and walked to his saddlebags, still piled near the door. He pulled out a leather journal, its covers worn from travel. "My uncle wrote to me regular over the years," he said, returning to the table. "I kept every letter." He opened the journal, revealing pressed pages covered in Josiah's careful script. This one came last Christmas. He read aloud, "Dear Ethan, the ranch prospers. Though not in ways I expected, I've found myself guardian to some remarkable souls who needed shelter from life's storms. They've brought purpose to my old age, reminding me that protecting the innocent is the highest calling a man can answer. Should anything happen to me, I hope you'll continue what I've started. These women deserve better than what this harsh world offers. They deserve a chance to live free." Silence settled over the room. Eliza wiped at her eyes while Mary studied her clasped hands. "He wrote about us?" Clara asked softly. "In every letter for the past 2 years. Never used names, but he was clear about his feelings. You weren't charity cases to him. You were family." "Then why didn't he leave the ranch to us?" Ruth's question held no accusation, just curiosity. "Because Boone would have contested it." Clara answered before Ethan could. 4 unrelated women inheriting from an elderly man? Boone would have had his judge declare us fortune hunters, thrown us off before the ink dried. But a blood nephew, a veteran with his own reputation, that's harder to challenge. Mary understood. "Josiah was protecting you even in death," Ethan confirmed. "The question now is how we protect ourselves going forward." Clara stood, moving to a chest in the corner. She returned with a rolled map, spreading it across the table. "This is the county. Boone's land is marked in red." Ethan whistled low. The red sections covered nearly half the map, surrounding their ranch on 3 sides. "He's been buying or forcing out smaller ranchers for years," Ruth explained. "We're one of the last holdouts. The river forms our eastern boundary." Clara pointed out, "That's our strongest defensive position. North and south we have some hills, but the western approach is wide open." "Where he'll come from," Ethan noted. "Most likely. Though Boone prefers intimidation to open warfare. He'll try to make us miserable first, cut off our water, rustle our cattle, prevent us from getting supplies in town. Then we need to be self-sufficient." Ethan decided. "What's our current situation?" Mary fetched a ledger. "We have about 50 head of cattle, 2 dozen horses, chickens, a vegetable garden. The well's good. Never run dry. Root cellars stocked, but we'll need more supplies before winter." "Ammunition?" "Limited," Clara admitted. "Josiah was planning a trip to Austin for supplies when he took sick. We'll need more, and we need to secure what we have." Ethan studied the map. "These line shacks on the property boundaries, are they in good repair?" "Mostly. Why?" "Early warning system. We post lookouts, rotate shifts. Anyone approaches, we know about it before they reach the main house." "That's a lot of ground for 5 people to cover," Ruth pointed out. "Then we focus on the most likely approaches, and we prepare fallback positions." His military experience was showing now. If we can't hold the whole ranch, we hold the core, the house, barn. Well, make it costly for them to dig us out. "You're talking like this is a war," Eliza said nervously. "It is," Ethan replied gently but firmly. "Boone declared it the moment he decided women were property. We're just choosing to fight back." Clara studied him with those storm-gray eyes. "You really mean to do this? Stand with us against Boone? Maybe die defending women you met today?" "My uncle thought you were worth protecting. That's good enough for me." He paused. "Besides, I've fought for worse causes. At least this one's clear, protecting good people from a bad man." "Simple as that?" Mary asked. "Simple as that." Ruth laughed, not unkindly. "You might be as crazy as Josiah was. Probably runs in the family." A sudden sound outside made everyone freeze horses approaching fast. Clara grabbed her rifle while Ruth moved to the window. "Riders," Ruth reported. "Just 2, coming from town." They waited tensely until the riders came into view in the moonlight. Clara relaxed slightly. "It's the Murphy brothers. They ride for the Cartwright spread north of here. The two young men reined up outside, looking nervous. Clara stepped onto the porch, weapon lowered but ready. Tom, Daniel, bit late for a social call. Sorry, Miss Clara. The older one. Tom said, but we thought you should know. Boone's been in town all afternoon, talking to everyone, offering good money for information about the stranger who arrived today. And, Clara prompted, and he's calling a meeting tomorrow. All the ranchers, businessmen, says he wants to discuss the situation at the McGraw place. Meaning he wants to turn the town against us. Ruth interpreted. Daniel, the younger brother, shifted in his saddle. Pa wanted you to know he won't be part of it. Says Josiah was a good man, and he won't dishonor his memory, but he won't stand against Boone either. Clara finished. He's got a family. Miss Clara, you understand. We understand, Mary said sadly. Thank him for the warning. Tom cleared his throat. There's more. Boone's brought in some new men, gunfighters from El Paso, mean-looking bunch. How many? Ethan asked. Stepping into view, the brothers startled at the sight of him. You're the nephew, Tom said. Least a dozen new faces. Maybe more. They're camped outside town. Preparing for a siege, Ethan murmured. Mister, if you've got any sense, you'll take these ladies and run, Daniel advised. Boone wants this land bad enough to do things even he wouldn't have done while Josiah lived. Running's not an option, Clara said firmly. Then God help you, Tom said, because no one else will. The brothers wheeled their horses and rode off, leaving the five standing in the doorway. So it begins, Clara said quietly. Let it, Ethan replied. We knew this was coming, now we prepare. They filed back inside, each lost in thought. The stories had been told. The past laid bare. Now came the hard part, facing what that past had set in motion. We should rest in shifts, Ethan suggested. I'll take first watch. I'll join you, Clara said, when he looked surprised. She added, someone needs to show you the defensive positions Josiah established. Besides, after those stories, I don't think any of us will sleep easy tonight. As the others prepared for bed, Ethan and Clara took position on the porch, rifles across their knees, watching the darkness for signs of trouble. Thank you, Clara said after a while, for listening, for staying. Thank my uncle, Ethan replied. He set this in motion. Maybe, but you could have walked away. Most men would have. I'm not most men. No, Clara agreed, studying his profile in the moonlight. You're not. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote howled. The sound was answered by others, a chorus of predators calling in the night. It seemed fitting. Ethan thought, predators circling, waiting for their chance. But inside the house, 4 remarkable women prepared to face whatever came, and on the porch, their unlikely protector kept watch, understanding now what his inheritance truly meant. Not just land, but lives. Not just property, but purpose. The past had been revealed. Now the future waited, uncertain and dangerous, but no longer faced alone. The morning sun cast long shadows across the ranch yard as Ethan finished checking the horses. 3 days had passed since the Murphy brothers' warning. 3 days of tense preparation and watchful nights. The expected attack hadn't materialized, which worried him more than gunfire would have. They're trying to make us sweat, Ruth observed, joining him at the corral fence. Boone knows waiting wears on people worse than fighting. Maybe, or he's organizing something bigger. Ethan studied the horizon. Clara said the town meeting was yesterday. Any word? Mary went to the Cartwright place this morning to trade eggs for information. Should be back soon. As if summoned. They spotted Mary's wagon approaching from the north, moving faster than usual. Clara and Eliza emerged from the house, drawn by the urgency of the horse's gait. Mary pulled up hard, her usually calm face flushed with anger. It's worse than we thought. Boone's convinced half the town we're harboring criminals. What? Clara demanded. He's claiming Josiah was senile in his final days. that we manipulated him. Says we're wanted women from various territories, hiding out here. Mary climbed down from the wagon, her hands shaking. He's even produced wanted posters. Forgeries. Ruth spat. Doesn't matter if people believe them. Mary pulled a folded paper from her pocket. Mrs. Cartwright slipped me this. It's circulating in town. Ethan unfolded the poster. It showed a rough sketch that could have been Clara, labeled Sarah Thornton, wanted for theft and moral corruption in Kansas City. Moral corruption. Clara laughed bitterly. That's what they call it when a woman refuses to be a man's plaything. There's one for each of us, Mary continued. Different names, different crimes, all lies, but believable enough. He's offering rewards for information leading to our capture. Trying to turn the town against us, Ethan said. Make us outcasts so no one will help when he moves. Eliza, who had been silent, suddenly pointed toward the western road. Someone's coming. A lone rider approached under a white flag. As he drew closer, they recognized Garrett's scarred face. That's far enough, Ethan called out when the man was 50 yards away. Message from Mr. Boone, Garrett announced. He wants to meet, talk terms. We've heard his terms before, Clara replied. Different now. He's willing to be generous, considering the situation. Garrett's smile was unpleasant. 1 hour, at the old oak between our properties. Just Boone and McGraw. No weapons. It's a trap, Ruth said immediately. Maybe, Ethan allowed. But we need to know what he's planning. I'll come with you, Clara decided. Alone means alone, Garrett called out. Boone sees anyone else. The meeting's off. Ethan made his decision. Tell Boone I'll be there. Garrett tipped his hat mockingly and rode off. The women immediately crowded around Ethan. Protests overlapping. You can't trust him. It's obviously a trap. Let me follow at a distance. Enough, Ethan said firmly. I need to look this man in the eye. Understand what we're dealing with. Clara, you're in charge while I'm gone. If I'm not back in 2 hours, we come looking, Clara finished. With every gun we have, Ruth added. An hour later, Ethan approached the massive oak tree that marked the unofficial boundary between the McGraw Ranch and Boone's empire. The man waiting for him looked exactly like what he was, a successful predator who'd grown fat on others' misfortune. Harlan Boone stood about 6 feet tall, thick through the chest and shoulders, with graying hair and cold blue eyes. His clothes were expensive but practical, and despite the agreement, Ethan noticed the bulge of a hideout gun in his vest. Mr. McGraw. Boone greeted him with false warmth. Good of you to come. Say your piece. Boone. Direct. I like that. Boone pulled out a cigar, taking his time lighting it. I'll be equally direct. You're in over your head, son. Those women have filled your head with sob stories, painted me as some kind of monster. But I'm just a businessman trying to protect my interests. Your interests in human property? Boone's eyes hardened. Now see, that's the kind of talk that causes misunderstandings. I've never owned anyone. I've offered employment, extended credit, provided opportunities. If people can't fulfill their obligations, that's hardly my fault. Employment at gunpoint. Opportunities that lead to servitude. You've been here, 3 days? And you think you understand how this country works? Boone blew smoke into the air. This land breaks people, McGraw, the weak, the foolish, the unlucky. I provide structure, order. Without men like me, this would all still be wilderness. My uncles seem to manage fine without your structure. Your uncle was a relic, honorable, I'll grant, but outdated. This is a new age. McGraw, the war's over. It's time for progress. Development. That ranch of yours sits on the best water access in the county. Under proper management, it could anchor a cattle empire. It's doing fine under current management. Boone laughed. 4 women playing at ranching? They'll be broke or dead within a year. I'm offering you a way out. Sell to me. I'll give you twice what the land's worth. You can take your house guests and start fresh somewhere else. Not interested. I haven't finished. Boone stepped closer. See, those wanted posters aren't entirely fabricated. Oh, the names are wrong, the crime's exaggerated. But there's enough truth to cause problems. That schoolteacher from back east? Her father's debts are real. He owes money to some unsavory people in Philadelphia. They'd be very interested to know where his daughter's hiding. Ethan kept his face neutral despite his anger. Threatening women now. Sharing information. The redhead, Ruth. She did work in my establishment. Signed a contract. Never formally released from it. That's theft of services in any court. Your establishment. You mean your brothel? Saloon with accommodations. All legal and above board. Boone's smile was reptilian. Young Eliza's situation is even more clear-cut. Her father owed me $800, legal debt, properly documented. As his only heir, that obligation passes to her. You can't inherit debt in Texas. No, but you can inherit the consequences of debt, the land her father claimed, the possessions he left, all technically mine until the debt's settled, including any personal arrangements he might have made for payment. Ethan's hand itched for his gun, but he controlled himself. And Clara. Ah, the widow. Interesting case. Did you know her late husband had partners in his mining venture? Silent partners who've never been paid their share. I recently acquired their interests. Technically, she owes me for 3 years of illegally withheld profits. You've thought of everything. I'm thorough. Boone dropped his cigar, grinding it under his heel. Here's my offer. Sell me the ranch. I'll forgive all debts and claims. The women can leave the territory unmolested. You get rich, they get freedom. Everyone wins. Except you get the land you've been scheming for. Is that so terrible? I'll develop it properly. Bring prosperity to the region. Those women are wasted here. McGraw, the school teacher should be in a city somewhere, teaching proper children. The young one should be married, raising babies. Even the other two could find better situations elsewhere. Under your thumb, you mean? Boone's friendly mask slipped. You have no idea who you're challenging. Boy, I own the law in 3 counties. I have 50 men on my payroll. Your uncle survived because he had connections, reputation. You're nobody. Just another drifter who'll disappear in the Badlands. Is that a threat? It's a certainty if you don't see sense. Boone pulled out a pocket watch. You have 24 hours to consider my offer. After that, things get unpleasant. They're already unpleasant. You haven't seen anything yet. Boone turned to leave, then paused. Oh, one more thing. That meeting in town? I've convinced the Merchants Association to stop extending credit to the McGraw Ranch. No supplies, no services. Anyone who helps you risks their own livelihoods. You're isolated. McGraw? Completely alone. We'll manage. Will you? Winter's coming. You'll need supplies, medicine, ammunition. Where will you get them? How will you pay? Boone smiled coldly. I'm patient. McGraw. I can wait while you starve, while your cattle die, while those women you're protecting slowly realize you've doomed them. And when they're desperate enough, they'll come to me willingly. They'll never do that. Everyone has a breaking point, even proud women, especially proud women. Boone mounted his waiting horse. 24 hours. McGraw. Use them wisely. Ethan watched him ride away, anger and worry warring in his chest. Boone was right about one thing. They were isolated now. Without town support, the ranch would struggle to survive, let alone fight off attacks. He rode back slowly, planning. At the ranch, the women waited anxiously on the porch. He dismounted and told them everything, holding nothing back. Bastard, Ruth cursed. Using law and paper to do what guns can't. We knew he was clever. Clara said thoughtfully, This is just another tactic. An effective one, Mary pointed out. Without supplies, we can't last long. There might be another way, Eliza said quietly. Everyone turned to her. The Mexicans, the Vaquero family south of the river, they have no love for Boone. He's pushed many of them off their lands. They might trade with us. It's risky. Clara mused. Crossing the river repeatedly would be dangerous, but it could work. What about the Murphy brothers? Ruth suggested. They seem sympathetic. Maybe they'd help secretly. We can't ask them to risk their family's future. Mary objected. Then we get creative. Ethan decided. Multiple sources, small amounts. Nothing traceable to any one person. And we start immediately, before Boone tightens the noose. I know some of the Mexican families, Eliza offered. My father traded with them. They might remember me kindly. I can reach out to some of the other ranchers' wives, Mary added. Woman to woman, quiet-like. Some of them have no love for Boone either. And I'll work on the saloon contacts, Ruth said. Not everyone there agrees with Boone's methods. Might be some supplies fall off wagons now and then. Clara looked at Ethan. What about Boone's offer? What about it? Are you considering it? It would be the safe choice. Take the money. Start over somewhere else. Ethan met each woman's eyes in turn. This morning I owned a ranch. Tonight I own a cause. I'm not selling either. Even if it means fighting the whole county? Mary asked. Even then. You're as stubborn as Josiah, Clara said, but there was approval in her voice. Speaking of fighting, Ethan continued, we need to prepare for what happens when that 24 hours is up. Boone will test us, probably hit the outer holdings first. We need to decide what we can defend and what we can afford to lose. They spent the evening planning, mapping out defenses, organizing supplies. As night fell, Ethan found himself on the porch again, this time with Ruth keeping watch beside him. You know we can't win a straight fight, she said bluntly. Not against 50 men. No, but we don't need to. We just need to make it too expensive for Boone to win. How many men are you willing to kill for this land? Ethan considered the question. Wrong way to think about it. The question is, how many men is Boone willing to lose for it? Hired guns fight for money. When the job gets too dangerous, they find easier work. Ruth finished. You're gambling that Boone's greed has limits. Everything has limits. Except maybe stubbornness. Seems the McGraw men have an endless supply. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars emerge. Finally, Ruth spoke again. Why are you really doing this? And don't say it's for your uncle or the land. What's in it for you? Ethan took his time answering. I've been drifting since the war, looking for something worth building, worth protecting. This place, these people, it feels like purpose. Purpose, Ruth repeated. That's a dangerous thing to find out here. Maybe, but I'd rather die for something than live for nothing. Ruth studied him in the darkness. The others are starting to believe in you, even Clara, and she doesn't trust Easy. Don't let them down, McGraw. I won't. Because if you do, if you turn out to be just another man making promises he can't keep. She patted the rifle across her knees meaningfully. Understood. Inside the house, the other women prepared for what was coming. Ammunition was counted, supplies organized, windows reinforced. The transformation from home to fortress continued. Each board nailed and weapon cleaned a declaration of intent. 24 hours, Boone had said. After that, things would get unpleasant. Ethan smiled grimly in the darkness. Boone had no idea how unpleasant things could get when good people decided to stand their ground. The rancher might have law and numbers, but the McGraw Ranch had something more. People willing to fight for their freedom, their dignity, their right to exist on their own terms. The pressure was building now, the noose tightening as Boone had promised. But pressure could forge steel as easily as it could break spirits. And looking at the determined faces of the women he'd sworn to protect, Ethan knew which way this group would go. Let Boone come with his 50 men, his legal papers, his threats and isolation. The McGraw Ranch would be ready. The real fight was about to begin. The first week after Boone's ultimatum tested them in ways none had expected. The isolation was complete. No one from town would trade with them openly. But as Clara had predicted, there were those willing to help in secret. Supplies appeared mysteriously at the edge of their property. Payment left in prearranged locations. It was during the second week that Ethan began to notice the changes in how the women moved around him. Where before there had been wariness and distance, now there were small gestures of trust. A hand on his shoulder when Mary brought him coffee. Ruth seeking his opinion on defensive positions. Eliza's shy smiles when he complimented her cooking. "You're becoming part of the family," Clara observed one evening as they checked the horses. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. "Is that what we are? A family?" A strange one, perhaps, but yes. She ran her hand along a mare's flank. Josiah used to say that family wasn't just blood. It was who stood with you when the world turned dark. Wise man. He'd have liked you. I think you have his way of making people feel safe. Clara paused, then added softly, "It's been a long time since I felt safe." Ethan looked at her, really looked, in the fading light, with her guard down. He could see past the tough exterior to the woman beneath, one who'd lost much but refused to be broken by it. "You are safe," he said. "I promise you that. Promises are dangerous things. Ethan McGraw. Only if you don't mean to keep them." Their eyes met and held for a moment before Clara looked away. "We should get back. Ruth will want to go over the watch schedule again." But as they walked back to the house, Ethan noticed she stayed closer to him than necessary, their shoulders almost touching. Inside, they found Mary tending to a cut on Ruth's hand. "What happened?" Clara demanded. "Nothing serious," Ruth said, though she winced as Mary cleaned the wound. "Was fixing the fence on the south pasture when some of Boone's men rode by. One of them took a shot at me. Missed, but I cut myself diving for cover." "They're getting bolder," Ethan noted grimly. "Testing us." Mary agreed. She wrapped Ruth's hand carefully, seeing how we react to provocation. "Tomorrow I ride with you," Ethan decided. "No one goes out alone anymore." "I don't need protection," Ruth protested. "It's not about need," Eliza said from where she was preparing dinner. "It's about being smart. We're stronger together." Ruth looked ready to argue, but Mary placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "She's right. Pride won't stop bullets." Later that evening, as they gathered for dinner, the domestic scene struck Ethan as both ordinary and extraordinary. Here they were, 5 people who'd been strangers weeks ago, sharing a meal like any family might. Yet each wore a gun, and someone always kept watch at the window. "Tell us about the cattle drives," Eliza requested as she served the stew. "You said you worked them for years." Ethan smiled at her eagerness. "Not much to tell. Months of dust and monotony, punctuated by moments of sheer terror. Sounds like life here," Ruth observed dryly. "Were you ever scared?" Eliza asked. "Every day. Stampedes, river crossings, storms, plenty to be scared of, but the worst was the loneliness, months away from anything resembling home or family." "Is that why you came here?" Mary asked gently. "Looking for home? Maybe. Didn't expect to find it quite like this, though life rarely goes as expected." Clara said, "We all came here running from something, looking for something else. Found each other instead." "And now we have you," Eliza added, then blushed at her own forwardness. "Whether you wanted me or not," Ethan said lightly, but he caught the look that passed between the women. "We want you," Ruth said bluntly. "Took some convincing, but you've proven yourself. Question is, do you want us? All our complications and dangers. I'm here, aren't I?" "For now," Mary said quietly. "But when Boone increases the pressure, when the bullets start flying in earnest, will you still want this then?" Instead of answering immediately, Ethan looked at each of them. Clara with her cautious strength, Mary with her gentle wisdom, Ruth with her fierce loyalty, Eliza with her hopeful courage. Each had suffered, each had survived, and each had chosen to trust him. "My uncle saw something worth protecting here," he finally said. "Now I see it too. You ask if I want this? Yes, all of it. The danger, the complications, and especially the people." The silence that followed was heavy with meaning. Then Ruth raised her coffee cup. "To the McGraw Ranch, to family, chosen and otherwise." They drank, and the moment passed. But something had shifted. The last walls of reserve began to crumble. Over the following days, Ethan found himself drawn into their rhythms. He worked alongside Clara with the horses, discovering her dry humor and deep knowledge of ranching. She'd run her late husband's small spread mostly alone, developing skills most men would envy. Samuel was a dreamer, she told him one afternoon as they repaired a corral gate. Always chasing the next big strike. I loved him for it, but dreams don't mend fences or bring in crops. So you did the practical work while he dreamed? Someone had to. Then he died, and the dreams died with him, leaving only debts and hard choices. She hammered a nail with perhaps more force than necessary. Boone knew exactly when to circle, like a vulture sensing weakness. But you fought him off, thanks to Josiah, and now thanks to you. She looked at him sideways. Though I wonder sometimes if we're just delaying the inevitable. Nothing's inevitable except what we accept. Spoken like a man who's never been powerless. But she said it without bitterness. And when their hands accidentally touched reaching for the same tool, neither pulled away immediately. With Mary, Ethan discovered a different kind of connection. She'd set up a small schoolroom in the spare bedroom, teaching Eliza and even Ruth when she could convince her to sit still. One evening, he found her there preparing lessons. "You miss it," he observed. "Real teaching, real students. Sometimes, but this is important too. Ruth never learned to read properly, and Eliza's education was interrupted." She showed him the books she'd salvaged. "Your uncle helped collect these, said education was the best defense against men like Boone." He was right. Knowledge is power. "Is that why you're letting me teach you those medical techniques?" She smiled at his surprise. "Oh, yes, I've noticed you watching when I tend injuries. You want to learn." Seemed useful. "And you're a good teacher." Flatterer. But she was pleased. "Sit. I'll show you proper wound cleaning. Given our situation, we'll all need medical knowledge." As she demonstrated, her hands guiding his, Ethan became aware of her proximity, the light floral scent she somehow maintained despite their rough circumstances. Mary was gentle but strong, intellectual but practical, contradictions that made her fascinating. "You could have had a comfortable life in Philadelphia," he said. "Why risk everything coming west?" "Because comfortable isn't the same as meaningful. I want it to matter, to make a difference. Even if that difference is just teaching one girl to read or keeping one wound from going septic. You matter," he assured her. "More than you know." Her hand stilled on his. "Careful, Mr. McGraw." A girl might start to believe such words. With Ruth, the connection was more volatile but no less real. She challenged him constantly, testing his commitment and resolve. During their shared watches, she'd probe his defenses with the same intensity she watched for threats. "You ever been in love, McGraw?" she asked one night, apropos of nothing. "Once, during the war. Didn't end well. They never do. That's why I stick to horses. Simpler relationships. Lonelier, too. Maybe, but safer." She was quiet for a moment. "Boone wanted me to sing in his saloon. Had a whole story about discovering my talent, making me a star. I was fool enough to believe it at first." "You weren't a fool. You were hopeful. There's a difference. Hope's dangerous for women like us. Women like you. Ones who've learned that men's promises are usually lies wrapped in prettier words." She looked at him directly. "You're different, though. Can't figure out if that makes you more dangerous or less. I'm just a man trying to do right. That's what makes you dangerous. We might actually start to trust you." "Would that be so bad?" Ruth didn't answer, but later, when the night grew cold, she didn't protest when he draped his jacket around her shoulders. With Eliza, everything was simpler yet somehow more complex. She looked at him with an admiration that was part hero worship, part something deeper. He was careful to treat her as the young woman she was, not the child she sometimes seemed. "I've been practicing," she told him one afternoon, showing him her improved marksmanship. "Ruth says I'm getting better." "You are. Your stance is good. Breathing controlled. Your father taught you the basics?" "Some. before he got sick. Her face clouded. I miss him, even though he made mistakes. Is that wrong? No. Love doesn't end just because someone fails us. It just gets more complicated. Like how we're starting to love you? The directness of youth caught him off guard. Eliza, I'm not a child, she said firmly. I know what I feel. We all do, even if the others won't say it. You've become part of us, part of this place. That means something. Yes, he agreed quietly. It does. As the days passed, the bonds deepened. There were moments of surprising intimacy. Clara falling asleep against his shoulder during a late planning session. Mary absently straightening his collar before dinner. Ruth actually laughing at one of his jokes. Eliza trustingly taking his hand when thunder spooked her during a storm. But it was during an evening when Boone's men had been particularly aggressive, riding close and shouting threats, that things crystallized. They sat around the fire, tension making everyone edgy. He's going to make his real move soon, Clara said. This harassment is just the prelude. Let him come, Ruth said fiercely. I'm tired of waiting. Be careful what you wish for, Mary cautioned. I'm not afraid to die, Ruth declared. I am, Eliza admitted quietly. Not of dying itself, but of dying before I've really lived, before I've... She glanced at Ethan, then away. We're not going to die, Ethan said firmly. Any of us. You can't promise that. Clara said, Watch me. He stood, pacing before the fire. Yes, Boone's coming. Yes, it'll be hard. But we have advantages he doesn't. We have something worth fighting for. Each other. This place. The right to live as we choose. Pretty words, Ruth said, but not unkindly. More than words. He looked at each of them. I came here expecting to find land and solitude. Instead, I found you. All of you. And I'll be damned if I let Boone or anyone else take that away. Even if it means standing against the whole county? Mary asked. Even then, even if we're difficult and stubborn and come with more troubles than you bargained for? Clara added. Especially then. Even if, Eliza started, then stopped, blushing. Whatever you were going to say, yes, Ethan said gently. The answer is yes. Ruth stood abruptly. This is getting too sentimental. I need air. But as she passed Ethan, she squeezed his arm briefly. One by one they dispersed to their evening tasks, but the warmth lingered. Later, as Ethan took his turn at watch, Clara joined him on the porch. You meant it, she said. Every word. I did. We're not easy women to care for. Ethan, each of us has been broken in some way. We have sharp edges, dark moments, fears that wake us at night. I'm not exactly undamaged myself. No, she agreed. Maybe that's why this works. We're all a little broken, all a little lost, but together we're finding our way. Clara leaned against the porch rail beside him. When I first saw you, I thought you were just another threat, another man come to take what wasn't his. And now I think you might be the answer to prayers I didn't even know I was praying. She turned to face him. Is it wrong that I'm glad you came, even with all the danger it's brought? If it's wrong, then I'm guilty too, because there's nowhere I'd rather be than right here. The moon rose full and bright, casting silver light across the land they were prepared to fight for, somewhere in the darkness. Boone's men watched and waited, but here on the porch, in this moment, there was peace. Whatever happens, Clara said softly, I want you to know that you've given us something precious. Hope. The belief that we're worth protecting, worth fighting for. You are, each of you. And you've given us something else, she continued, her voice dropping even lower. You've shown us that not all men see women as possessions or problems. Some see us as people, as partners, as family. Ethan finished. Yes, family. She smiled in the moonlight. The strangest family in Texas, perhaps, but family nonetheless. As if drawn by their conversation, the others gradually joined them on the porch. Mary brought coffee, Ruth her rifle, Eliza a shawl for Clara. They stood together, watching the night, each lost in thought but united in purpose. Tomorrow Boone will probably make his move. Ethan said, "He's running out of patience." "Then tomorrow we show him what this family is made of." Ruth declared. "All of us," Mary added, looking at Ethan. "Together." "Pick one?" Clara said, echoing her words from that first day. "No, Mr. McGraw. You have us all, for better or worse." "For better," Ethan said firmly. "Definitely for better." The attack came at dusk, when the dying light made shadows long and aim uncertain. Ethan was checking the horses when he heard the first shot, a rifle crack that sent birds exploding from the nearby cottonwoods. "Riders coming?" Ruth's voice rang out from her position on the barn roof. 20, maybe more. From the west!" Ethan sprinted for the house, where Clara was already distributing ammunition. Mary pulled Eliza away from the windows while checking her medical supplies. They'd drilled this scenario dozens of times over the past days, each person knowing their role. "They're spreading out," Ruth reported, climbing down quickly. "Trying to surround us." "Expected as much," Ethan said, checking his Winchester. "Everyone remember the plan. We hold the house and barn. Let them come to us." Through the window, they could see the riders taking positions behind whatever cover they could find. Wagons, fence posts, the scattered boulders that dotted the landscape. Garrett's scarred face was visible among them, barking orders. "McGraw!" Boone's voice carried across the distance. The man himself sat his horse just out of rifle range, flanked by gunmen. "Last chance to see reason. Send out the women, sign over the deed, and you can ride away." "Counteroffer," Ethan called back. "You and your men leave now, and we don't fill you full of lead." Brave talk from a man outnumbered 4-1. "Your math's still off, Boone. And numbers don't matter much when you're defending instead of attacking." "We'll see about that." Boone raised his hand, and the night exploded. Gunfire erupted from multiple directions, windows shattering as bullets searched for targets. The defenders returned fire, picking their shots carefully. Clara and Ethan took the front windows, Ruth and Mary the sides, while Eliza watched the back approach. "They're moving on the barn," Mary called out, squeezing off 2 quick shots. "Let them," Ethan replied. "We can't defend everything." But Ruth had other ideas. She'd rigged some surprises around the property, small charges that wouldn't kill but would certainly discourage. As 3 men approached the barn door, she grinned and pulled a wire. The explosion sent them tumbling backward, cursing and confused. "That's my girl," Clara muttered approvingly, then fired at a figure trying to flank them. The battle settled into a rhythm probing attacks followed by retreats, neither side able to gain clear advantage. Boone's men had numbers, but the defenders had cover and preparation. As full darkness fell, muzzle flashes lit the night like deadly fireflies. "How's ammunition?" Ethan asked during a lull. "Holding," Clara reported. "But they're trying to wear us down." A crash from the back of the house made them all turn. 2 men had reached the rear door and were trying to force it. Eliza, stationed there, fired through the wood. A cry of pain rewarded her efforts. "Good shot," Ruth called out. But more men were moving in the darkness, using the distraction to get closer. Ethan realized they were being drawn thin, forced to cover too many approaches. "Fall back to the main room," he ordered. "Tighter defense." They moved quickly, abandoning the outer rooms but creating a stronger position. Furniture became barricades. Doorways became kill zones. "Scared yet?" Ruth asked Ethan as they reloaded. "Terrified," he admitted. "You?" "Having the time of my life." But her bravado couldn't quite hide the fear in her eyes. A new volley of gunfire shattered more windows. In the brief illumination of muzzle flashes, Ethan saw men moving closer, using the cover of darkness to advance. "They're going to rush us," he warned. "Let them come," Clara said grimly. Mary moved among them, checking for injuries, her calm presence steadying everyone. When she reached Ethan, she found blood on his sleeve. "You're hit. Graze. Nothing serious." She tore his sleeve anyway, cleaning and binding the wound with quick efficiency. "Can't have you bleeding out on us. We've grown rather fond of you." "The feeling's mutual," he said, catching her hand briefly. "McGraw," Boone's voice came again. "This is pointless. You're outnumbered, outgunned. How long before one of those women takes a bullet meant for you? How will you live with that?" "Shut up and fight, you coward!" Ruth shouted back. "Or are you afraid to do your own dirty work?" The response was another barrage of gunfire. But now Ethan noticed something. The shots were less coordinated, some of Boone's men firing wildly rather than with purpose. The prolonged fight was wearing on them too. "Eliza, check the back approach again," he ordered. "Careful now." The young woman nodded, moving cautiously to her position. A moment later, she called out urgently, "Fire! They've set fire to the woodshed!" Smoke began drifting across the yard, illuminated by growing flames. Ethan cursed. Fire was every rancher's nightmare, especially when defending a position. "It won't spread to the house," Clara said quickly. "Too much distance, and the wind's wrong, but they'll use the smoke for cover." She was right. Shapes moved in the smoky darkness. Harder to target now. The defenders fired at shadows, knowing they were wasting ammunition but unable to let the approach go unchallenged. Then, through the chaos, came an unexpected sound: horses approaching from the east, not a few riders, but many, their hoofbeats thundering across the hard-packed earth. "Reinforcements for Boone?" Mary asked worriedly. But the new arrivals announced themselves with a rebel yell that made Ethan's heart leap. Texas Rangers, a full company of them, swept into the fight with devastating efficiency. "About time you boys showed up." Ethan recognized Captain Jim Thornton's voice. The Rangers' arrival changed everything. Caught between the house's defenders and the lawmen's charge, Boone's men scattered. Some tried to fight, others to flee. In minutes, the sustained battle became a rout. "Hold your fire," Ethan called to the women. "Rangers have them now." They watched from the windows as the Rangers rounded up Boone's men. Garrett tried to escape, but was brought down by a perfectly placed shot from Thornton himself. Others threw down their weapons, hands raised in surrender. Boone, however, spurred his horse toward the house, pistol drawn, his face twisted with rage. He was focused on the front door, on Ethan, and didn't see Ruth step onto the porch from the side. Her rifle spoke once. Boone's gun flew from his hand as he cried out, clutching his wrist. His horse reared, dumping him unceremoniously in the dirt. "That's for threatening my family," Ruth said calmly. Rangers quickly surrounded the fallen rancher. Dragging him to his feet, Captain Thornton rode up to the house, tipping his hat to the defenders. "Ladies, McGraw, sorry we're late. Got your message 2 days ago, but had to gather evidence first." "My message?" Ethan was confused. Mary smiled. "I might have sent word to Austin when I went to the Cartwright place. Mentioned that Harlan Boone was threatening citizens and planning to attack a lawful property owner. Along with some other interesting details," Thornton added, "like his involvement in several unsolved deaths, including possibly Josiah McGraw's. You can't prove anything," Boone snarled, cradling his wounded wrist. "Actually, we can," Thornton said conversationally. "Amazing what people will confess when offered deals. Your man Peterson was very talkative about certain poisonings done at your order." Eliza gasped. "He killed Papa too?" "Looks that way. Miss, I'm sorry." The young woman's face hardened. "I'm not. Now we know for sure. Now there's justice." As the Rangers led Boone away, he turned back to glare at the house. "This isn't over. I have lawyers, judges, who'll all distance themselves once they see the evidence." Thornton interrupted. "Your reign's over. Boone, these folks are under the protection of Texas law now." The women emerged from the house slowly, as if unable to believe it was really over. Clara still clutched her rifle, knuckles white around the stock. Ruth kicked at a spent shell casing, trying to look nonchalant. Mary fussed over everyone's injuries, needing something to do with her hands. Eliza stood close to Ethan, trembling slightly from delayed reaction. "You're all right?" he asked her quietly. "I shot men tonight, maybe killed them, to protect your home, your family. There's no shame in that. I know, it's just... She looked up at him. Is it wrong that I'm not sorry? No, it would be wrong if you enjoyed it, but defending what's yours, that's just human. Captain Thornton approached, notebook in hand. I'll need statements from everyone, but that can wait until morning. For now, know that you're safe. We'll leave a few men here tonight, just in case any of Boone's rats try something stupid. Thank you, Captain, Clara said formally. We're in your debt. No, ma'am. We're in yours. You've helped us close cases going back years. Boone's going to hang for what he's done. After the Rangers made camp in the yard and the immediate chaos settled, the five gathered in the kitchen. The room showed battle damage, bullet holes in walls, broken glass swept into corners. But it was still home. We did it, Ruth said, disbelief coloring her voice. We actually did it. Together, Mary emphasized, looking at each of them. Clara turned to Ethan. You stayed, even when the bullets were flying, when you could have run. Where would I go? He asked simply. This is home, your family. A man doesn't abandon either. Even a family as unconventional as ours? Mary asked. Especially then. Eliza, exhausted and emotional, suddenly threw her arms around Ethan. Thank you for everything. One by one, the others joined the embrace, Ruth roughly, as if embarrassed by her own emotion. Mary gently, naturally. And finally, Clara, who whispered in his ear, Josiah would be so proud. They stood there in their damaged kitchen, smoke still drifting through broken windows, surrounded by Texas Rangers and captured outlaws. And somehow, it was perfect. So what happens now? Ruth asked eventually. Boone's gone, but we're still us, unmarried women living with a bachelor. Town gossip will be brutal. Let them gossip, Clara said firmly. We know who we are. A family, Eliza said. An odd one, maybe, but ours. Besides, Mary added with a slight smile, I suspect the captain's report will paint us as heroic defenders of hearth and home. Hard to gossip too badly about heroes. Heroes, Ruth snorted. We're just survivors who got lucky. No, Ethan corrected. You're women who refused to be victims, who fought for your right to exist on your own terms. If that's not heroic, I don't know what is. A knock interrupted them. Captain Thornton stood in the doorway. Sorry to intrude, but I thought you should know. We found documents in Boone's office. Seems he kept records of all his activities, your debts, real or fabricated. They're evidence now. No one will ever use them against you again. We're free, Eliza breathed. Completely and legally free, Thornton confirmed. Oh, and McGraw. There's a reward for Boone's capture, substantial one. Might help with rebuilding what got damaged tonight. After he left, they sat in stunned silence. Freedom, safety, a future without looking over their shoulders. It doesn't seem real, Mary murmured. It will, Clara said. Give it time. Ruth raised her coffee cup. To Josiah McGraw, who started this, and to Ethan McGraw, who finished it. To family. Ethan countered, all of us. They drank, and in that moment, despite the damage around them, despite the violence of the night, there was peace. Boone was gone. His threats ended. The ranch was theirs, truly and completely. You know, Clara said thoughtfully, we're going to need help rebuilding. Might have to hire some hands. Already thinking business, Ruth teased. Someone has to. We've got a ranch to run, cattle to tend, a life to build. Together, Mary said firmly. All of us, Eliza added, looking at Ethan. Pick one, he said, echoing that first day. No, I have you all, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Outside, dawn was breaking, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. The smoke had cleared, the threats ended. A new day was beginning for the McGraw Ranch and the unlikely family that called it home. The siege was over. The real work of living, of building something lasting together, was just beginning. And for the first time since they'd all arrived at this place, each running from something, they could stop running and start creating a future worth having. The ranch stood strong despite the night's battle. just as its defenders had. Whatever came next, they'd face it as they'd faced Boone united, determined, and unbreakable. Dawn broke crimson over the McGraw Ranch, painting the battle-scarred buildings in shades of blood and gold. Ethan stood on the porch, counting the riders approaching from the west, 15, maybe 20 men moving fast and purposeful. "They're back," Ruth said quietly beside him, checking her rifle. "Boone's remaining men has to be." The Rangers had left 2 days ago, taking Boone and most of his captured gang. But Ethan had known some would slip through, men too smart or too lucky to be caught in that first sweep. Now they came for revenge. "Wake the others," Ethan ordered. "Quietly. We've got maybe 10 minutes. But Clara was already moving through the house, rousing Mary and Eliza. They'd learned to sleep light these past weeks, weapons always within reach. "How many?" Clara asked, buckling on her gun belt. 20 or so. Coming hard. The Rangers are 2 days gone. This is on us." Mary appeared with Eliza, both fully dressed and armed. The young woman's face was pale but determined. They'd all known this wasn't over, that Boone's arrest wouldn't end everything. Too many men had lost easy money and power when their boss fell. "Same defensive positions?" Mary asked. "No." Ethan had been thinking about this, planning for it. "They'll expect that. We're going on the offensive this time." Ruth grinned wolfishly. "Now you're talking my language. Clara, you and Mary take the barn loft. Better angle on their approach. Ruth, you're with me at the corral. Eliza, I'm fighting," she interrupted. "Don't try to protect me. I wasn't going to. You're our best shot after Ruth. I need you on the roof with that Sharps rifle. Pick off anyone who tries to flank us." She nodded, fear replaced by purpose. They moved quickly, taking positions just as the riders crested the nearest hill. "McGraw!" The lead rider's voice carried across the morning air. Ethan recognized him. Jake Paulson, Boone's second in command, a man smart enough to be elsewhere when the Rangers came. "You've got something that belongs to us. Boone's in jail where he belongs." Ethan called back, "You've got no business here." "Not talking about Boone, talking about his property. Those women signed contracts, made agreements, legal documents that didn't disappear just because you got lucky with the Rangers. And he claims Boone had died with his arrest. Says you, but there's 20 of us say different." Paulson spurred his horse closer. "Here's the deal. Send out the women. We'll call it square. Keep them, and we'll burn this place to the ground with all of you in it." From the barn loft, Clara's voice rang out. "Only thing burning today will be you if you come any closer." "Ah, the widow." Paulson laughed. "Boone had special plans for you. Shame to let them go to waste." The shot came from the roof, Eliza's Sharp speaking with authority. Paulson's hat flew off, the bullet passing close enough to part his hair. "That's your only warning," Ethan said calmly. "Right away now, or stay permanent. You think you can take 20 men? You're outnumbered 4-1. Wouldn't be the first time." But Paulson was done talking. He wheeled his horse, shouting orders. His men spread out, some dismounting to find cover, others circling wide to flank the defenders. "Here they come," Ruth murmured, sighting down her rifle. The attack was more coordinated than Boone's had been. These men knew each other, had fought together before. They moved in teams, covering each other, probing for weaknesses. Ethan and Ruth held the corral, using the fence posts and water trough for cover. Their position gave them good sight lines, but also made them targets. Bullets whined overhead, splinters flying as shots struck wood. "Two moving on your left," Ruth warned. Firing twice, one man spun and fell, the other diving behind a wagon. From the barn, Clara and Mary kept up steady fire, forcing attackers to keep their heads down. But ammunition was limited. They couldn't maintain this rate for long. "They're trying to get to the house," Eliza's voice carried from the roof, followed by the boom of the Sharps. 3 men had indeed broken from cover, rushing toward the back door. Ethan turned to engage them, trusting Ruth to cover the corral. His Winchester spoke 3 times, and 2 attackers stumbled. The third made it to the porch before Eliza's shot caught him. "Good girl," Ruth muttered approvingly, but the attack was taking its toll. Mary cried out from the barn. "Not badly hurt," Clara quickly assured them, "but grazed enough to be worrying, and they were being pressed from too many directions." "Fall back to the house," Ruth suggested, firing as she spoke. "Not yet. They're not coordinated enough. See how they're bunching up on the south side?" Ruth looked and grinned. "You thinking what I'm thinking? If you're thinking about those surprises you planted. Already ahead of you? McGraw." She produced a small device, wires leading to charges she'd placed days ago. Just in case. The explosions weren't meant to kill, just discourage. But several attackers had gathered right in the blast zone. "Now?" she asked eagerly. "Now?" The explosion sent dirt and debris flying, men cursing and scattering. It broke their momentum, gave the defenders breathing room. "That's my Ruth," Clara called from the barn. But Paulson wasn't done. "Smoke them out," he ordered. Torches appeared, men preparing to set fires. This was the real threat. Flames could do what bullets couldn't, force them from defensive positions. "Take out those torchbearers," Ethan commanded. All 4 defenders focused fire on the men with torches. It became a desperate race. Could they stop the fires before being overwhelmed? The sharps boomed repeatedly, Eliza showing remarkable calm for one so young. Each shot was carefully aimed, deliberately placed. 2 torchbearers fell, then a third, but one got through, throwing his torch onto the barn's roof. The old wood, dry from summer heat, caught quickly. "Clara, Mary, get out of there!" The women scrambled down the ladder as smoke began filling the loft. They ran for the house, bullets chasing them across the open ground. Clara stumbled, and Mary turned back for her. "No!" Ethan broke cover, Ruth cursing as she tried to cover him. He reached the women just as Mary got Clara to her feet. Blood soaked Clara's side, more than a graze this time. Together, they half carried Clara to the house. Ruth's deadly accurate fire keeping attackers at bay. Eliza abandoned the roof to help, all of them crowding through the door as bullets peppered the walls. "How bad?" Ethan asked as Mary examined the wound. "Went through clean," Mary reported, working quickly. "Painful but not fatal if we keep it clean." Damn fool thing, running into the open. Clara gasped, though her eyes were warm on Ethan's face. "Couldn't let you have all the heroics, touching as this is," Ruth interrupted. "We're now trapped in a burning ranch with 15 men outside wanting our blood." She was right. Smoke from the barn was spreading, and sparks threatened other buildings. They were running out of options. "I should surrender," Eliza said suddenly. "It's me Boone wanted most. Maybe if I—" "No." All 4 adults spoke simultaneously. "We don't sacrifice family." Ethan said firmly, "We all get out, or none of us do." "Then how?" Mary asked, still working on Clara's wound. Ethan looked around the room at these remarkable women. Clara, wounded but still fierce. Ruth, defiant as ever. Mary, calm in crisis. Eliza, young but still strong. His family, strange as it was. "We attack," he decided. "They expect us to defend, to wait. Instead, we hit them hard, break through their line." "You're mad," Ruth said, then grinned. "I like it." "Clara can't ride," Mary protested. "I can shoot," Clara countered. "Prop me at a window. I'll cover your escape." "Our escape," Ethan corrected. "Mary, can you get Clara mobile enough for a wagon? With enough bandages and pure stubbornness?" "Yes." "Then we load the wagon. I'll drive. Ruth and Eliza ride shotgun. We punch through their line, make for town. They won't follow us there. Too many witnesses." "Assuming we survive the breakout," Ruth noted. "You have a better idea?" "No, just making sure we're all equally crazy." They prepared quickly. Mary bandaged Clara thoroughly while Ruth and Eliza loaded ammunition and supplies into the wagon. Ethan readied the horses, choosing the steadiest for this desperate run. "McGraw," Paulson's voice came again. "Running out of time in there. The fire's spreading. Let it burn." Ethan called back. We'll take you with us. Brave talk for a dead man. Ruth, Ethan said quietly. Remember that box of dynamite in the root cellar? Her eyes lit up. You beautiful, devious man? How much? Enough to make them think twice. Set it up at the front while we go out the back. She disappeared into the cellar, returning with sticks of dynamite and her trademark wild grin. This'll give them something to remember us by. They loaded Clara carefully into the wagon bed, pillows cushioning her, rifle still in her hands. Mary climbed up beside her while Ruth and Eliza mounted horses. Ethan took the driver's seat, checking his weapons one last time. Ready? He asked. Born ready, Ruth replied. Though I'd like it on record that this is insane. Noted. Eliza? The young woman nodded, fear and determination warring on her face. For family! For family! They echoed. Ruth lit the fuse on the dynamite bundle. 30 seconds, maybe 40. Then let's ride. They exploded from the back of the house like cavalry charging. The wagon thundered across the yard, Ruth and Eliza flanking it, all of them firing at the surprised attackers. Paulson's men, focused on the front of the burning building, were caught off guard. Several dove for cover as bullets flew. Others tried to reorganize, to block the escape route. The gate, Mary shouted, pointing to where 3 men were trying to close the main entrance. Eliza peeled off, riding hard at them. Her pistol barked repeatedly, and 2 men scattered. The third stood his ground until her horse knocked him flying. The wagon careened through the gate just as the dynamite exploded behind them. The blast shook the ground, sent debris flying, and, most importantly, convinced pursuit to hesitate. Keep going, Clara managed to shout, firing back at their pursuers despite her wound. They raced down the road toward town, dust clouding behind them. A few riders gave chase but fell back when Ruth demonstrated why she was the best shot in 3 counties. They're breaking off, Mary reported. Relief evident, but Ethan didn't slow until they reached the outskirts of town. Only then, with witnesses around and pursuit abandoned, did he ease back on the reins. We made it, Eliza breathed, disbelief coloring her voice. Told you we would, Ruth said, though her hands shook slightly as she holstered her guns. They rolled into town like refugees from war, which in a way they were. People stared at the shot-up wagon, the armed women, the smoke rising from the direction of the ranch. But they also saw something else, survivors who'd refused to be victims. Sheriff Morrison met them at his office, heard the shooting, Paulson, and about 15 others. Ethan confirmed. They attacked the ranch. We defended ourselves. They burned the barn, Clara added weakly. Tried to burn us out. The sheriff's face darkened. I'll wire the rangers again. This ends now. He looked at the wounded Clara. Doc Sullivan's expecting you. Sent him soon as I heard the shots. As they helped Clara to the doctor's office, townspeople gathered. Some looked disapproving, violence and impropriety in equal measure, but others, especially the women, looked at them with something like respect. You stood up to them, Mrs. Cartwright said quietly. All of Boone's men, and you stood up to them. We did what we had to, Mary replied simply. No, the older woman corrected. You did what most of us have been too afraid to do. You fought back. At the doctor's office, as Clara was being treated, the others finally allowed exhaustion to show. They sat in the waiting room, clothes smoke-stained and torn, faces marked by powder burns and determination. We lost the barn, Eliza said sadly. We'll rebuild, Ethan assured her. Better than before. With what money? Ruth asked practically. We just blew up half our ammunition and probably damaged the house. There's Boone's reward, Mary reminded them. And I suspect the town might be more willing to help now. We've shown that his men can be beaten. We've shown more than that, Clara said from the doorway, supported by the doctor but standing on her own feet. We've shown that nobody owns us. Not Boone, not his men, not anyone. You should be resting, Mary scolded. I'll rest when we're home. She looked at Ethan. Our home. All of us. Sheriff Morrison entered then, badge glinting. "Rangers are on their way, and I've got deputies heading to the ranch now. Any of Paulson's men still there are under arrest." "You think they'll stay to be arrested?" Ruth asked skeptically. "No, but they'll think twice about coming back." The sheriff studied them. "You folks planning to rebuild?" "Every board and nail," Ethan confirmed. "Good. This county needs people like you, people who won't be pushed around." As they prepared to return to the ranch with deputy escort this time, Ethan found himself surrounded by the women who'd become his family. "Thank you," Clara said simply. "For everything today? I made a promise," he replied. "To you, to Uncle Josiah, to myself. This is our land, our home. Nobody takes that from us." "Even when it means fighting half the county?" Mary asked. "Especially then." Ruth clapped him on the shoulder. "You'll do, McGraw. You'll definitely do." "Does this mean you trust me now?" he teased. "Let's not get carried away," she replied, but her grin took the sting from the words. As they rode back toward the ranch, smoke still rising in the distance, Ethan felt a strange peace settle over him. Yes, there was damage to repair, wounds to heal, a future to secure. But they'd faced the worst Boone's legacy could throw at them and survived. More than survived. They'd triumphed, together. The sun climbed higher, burning away the smoke and shadow of the dawn battle. Whatever came next, they'd rebuild stronger than before, because that's what family did. They stood together, fought together, and built together. And this family, unconventional as it was worth every bullet fired, every risk taken, every drop of blood shed in its defense. 6 months had passed since the battle with Paulson's men. The ranch bore new scars, but also new strength. The rebuilt barn stood taller and stronger than before, fresh lumber golden in the afternoon sun. Ethan stood on the porch, watching his unusual family go about their daily work. Clara emerged from the barn, her movements still slightly stiff from her wound, but otherwise fully recovered. She'd taken to wearing her hair down more often, the severe widow's bun replaced by softer styles that made her look younger. When she spotted him watching, she smiled, a real smile, not the guarded expression of those early days. "Admiring your handiwork?" she asked, joining him on the porch. "Admiring all of it," he replied, gesturing to encompass the whole ranch. Ruth rode in from checking the cattle, dust-covered but grinning. She'd become his unofficial foreman, her natural leadership and knowledge of horses making her invaluable. "Found 3 new calves," she reported. "Going to be a good year. The best," Mary agreed, stepping out from the house where she'd been teaching. She'd started a proper school in town 2 days a week, but always returned home to the ranch. "Eliza's making remarkable progress with her studies." "I heard that." Eliza called from the garden, where she was tending vegetables. At 19, she'd blossomed into a confident young woman, the scared girl who'd first arrived here just a memory. "And I'll have you know, I can now read Latin as well as English." "Show off," Ruth teased, dismounting with easy grace. They gathered for the evening meal as they always did, the kitchen warm with lamplight and laughter. The table Josiah had built now bore the marks of their shared life, scratches from planning sessions, stains from spilled coffee during late-night talks, the general wear of a well-used home. "I have news," Mary announced as they ate. "The town council met today. They're officially recognizing our ranch as a historical site of resistance against corruption." "Fancy words for place where we shot a lot of bad men," Ruth commented. "It means," Clara explained, "that what we did matters, that it's being remembered right. And," Mary continued, "they want to commission a plaque. Something about the brave women and men who stood against tyranny." "Men?" Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Pretty sure you 4 did most of the standing." "We wouldn't have lasted without you," Eliza said firmly. "Don't sell yourself short." "Besides," Ruth added with her characteristic grin, "someone had to drive the wagon during our glorious escape. Your skills as a teamster are legendary." They laughed, the sound filling the kitchen with warmth. These moments, Ethan thought, were worth every battle they'd fought. After dinner, as was their custom, they moved to the main room. Clara took up her mending. Mary, her book. Ruth, her guitar. A recent acquisition she was still learning. Eliza worked on correspondence, having taken over much of the ranch's bookkeeping. "Play that new song," Clara requested, "the one about the cowboys." Ruth strummed experimentally, her voice rough but pleasant as she sang. It was a simple melody about love and loss on the frontier, themes they all understood too well. "You're getting better," Mary observed when she finished. "Liar. But thanks." Ruth set the guitar aside. "Been thinking about something. Dangerous habit." Ethan teased. "Funny, man. No, seriously. What happens next? We've got the ranch secure, Boone's gang scattered to the winds. We've proved we can stand on our own. So, what now?" It was a question they'd all been dancing around for weeks. The immediate danger had passed, but the future remained uncharted. "We keep building," Clara said simply. "Make this place everything Josiah dreamed it could be." "And us?" Eliza asked softly. "What do we become?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. They'd been forced together by circumstance, held together by danger. Now, with peace, would those bonds hold? "We're already family," Mary said. "That doesn't change just because the shooting stopped." "But the town talks," Eliza pointed out. "4 women, 1 man, all unmarried. Let them talk," Ruth said fiercely. "We know who we are." "Do we?" Clara looked at Ethan. "We've never really discussed expectations, arrangements, the future beyond survival." Ethan set down his coffee cup, choosing his words carefully. "When I came here, I expected to find land. Instead, I found a home. Found all of you. I don't need legal papers or society's approval to know what we have is real." "Pretty words," Ruth said, but fondly. "But Clara's right. We should be clear about things." "Then I'll be clear." Ethan stood, looking at each of them. "I love this ranch. I love the life we've built. And I love each of you in different ways, but all real. If that makes us unconventional, so be it." "Even if it means never having a traditional marriage?" Mary asked quietly. "Never having children to inherit what we've built? Who says we can't have children?" Eliza blushed at her own boldness, but continued, "Lots of families raise children together. We just have more parents than most." "Getting ahead of yourself there, little sister," Ruth said, though not unkindly. "Am I? We're already a family. Why not make it official?" "How?" Clara asked. "The law doesn't recognize what we have." "Maybe not," Ethan said slowly. "But the town does. They've seen us fight together, build together. Sheriff Morrison calls us the McGraw clan without thinking twice. And there's precedent," Mary added thoughtfully. "Common law arrangements, especially on the frontier. Not typical, but not unheard of." Ruth laughed suddenly. "Look at us, planning a future like normal people. 6 months ago we were shooting it out with outlaws. 6 months ago we were strangers." Clara corrected. "Now." She looked around the room, her eyes soft. "Now I can't imagine life without any of you." "Then we make it work." Ethan decided. "Our way, our terms. The ranch is in my name legally, but I'll have papers drawn up making you all partners. Equal shares, equal say." "And if one of us wants to leave?" Ruth asked. "Find a more traditional life?" "Then they leave with our blessing and their fair share." Clara said firmly, "Family doesn't hold prisoners, but I hope none of us do." Eliza added quickly, "Leave. I mean, why would we?" Mary smiled. "Where else would we find such adventure? Or such stubborn people?" Ruth added. "Or such love." Clara finished quietly. They sat in comfortable silence, each lost in thought. The fire crackled, casting dancing shadows on walls that had seen so much. Outside, cattle lowed softly, and somewhere a coyote called to the moon. "I have something," Ethan said suddenly, rising and going to his room. He returned with a wooden box, worn with age. This was Josiah's. Been waiting for the right time. Inside were 5 items, 4 delicate gold bands and a pocket watch. His wife's rings. Clara breathed. I remember her wearing them. And his watch. Ethan lifted it. The gold-catching firelight. There's an inscription. Mary read it aloud. Time shared is never wasted. Love given is never lost. He left a note. Ethan produced a folded paper. Want me to read it? They nodded, gathering closer. If you're reading this, Ethan began, his voice thick with emotion. Then you found what I hoped you would, not just safety or partnership, but family. These rings were my Martha's, one for each finger of her left hand. She used to say she needed multiple reminders of love, being surrounded by my stubbornness. The watch was mine, to remember that time is precious. Use them as you see fit, but remember, symbols matter less than what they represent. You are my legacy, all of you. Be happy. Eliza wiped tears from her cheeks. Ruth cleared her throat roughly. Mary reached for Clara's hand. Well, Clara said after a moment, I suppose that's blessing enough. Ethan picked up one of the rings. Turning to Clara, I know we can't do this traditionally, but Clara Winchester McGraw has a nice sound to it. McGraw. She smiled through her tears. All of us McGraws. If you'll have the name. And me. Yes, she said simply, letting him slip the ring onto her finger. One by one. He offered rings to the others. Mary accepted hers with quiet joy. Ruth with characteristic bravado that didn't hide her emotion. And Eliza with youthful enthusiasm. This is probably illegal, Ruth observed, admiring her ring. Probably, Ethan agreed. Care? Not even a little. So we're all McGraws now? Eliza asked. Officially? Officially in our hearts. Mary said, That's what matters. The town will talk, Clara warned. They already do. Ruth shrugged. At least now they'll have something interesting to say. Ethan fastened Josiah's watch to his vest chain. Time shared is never wasted, he repeated. I want to share all of mine with you, all of you. Even when we're difficult? Mary teased. Especially then. Even when we disagree? Ruth challenged. That's what makes it interesting. Even when the world doesn't understand? Clara asked. The world doesn't have to. We do. Then it's settled, Eliza declared. We're the McGraw family. Unconventional, maybe, but ours. They spent the rest of the evening planning their future improvements to the ranch, expansion of Mary's school, Ruth's horse breeding program. Eliza's dreams of studying in Austin while maintaining her home here. Clara would manage the business side, her sharp mind perfect for negotiations and contracts. And you, Mary asked Ethan, what are your dreams? He looked around the room at these remarkable women who'd become his world. Already living them, though I wouldn't mind adding to our cattle operation. Maybe some sheep, too. Sheep? Ruth looked horrified. On a cattle ranch? Diversification, he said with a grin. Besides, imagine how scandalized the other ranchers will be. We're already the talk of 3 counties. Might as well give them more to discuss. Clara agreed. As the night grew late, they drifted off to their respective rooms, though the sleeping arrangements had become more fluid over the months. Comfort and companionship mattering more than propriety. Ethan stood once more on the porch, looking out over their land. The stars were bright, the air crisp with approaching autumn. Behind him, he heard footsteps. Can't sleep? Clara asked, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. Too much to think about. Regrets? Never. You? No. She stood beside him, close enough that their shoulders touched. Josiah would be so proud. We've made something beautiful here. We have. One by one, the others joined them, drawn by some invisible pull. They stood together on the porch, 5 souls who'd found each other against all odds. Pick one? Ruth said suddenly, echoing that first day with humor now instead of hostility. No, Mr. McGraw, you have us all. And you always will, Mary added, through whatever comes. Clara promised, forever and always. Eliza finished. Ethan wrapped his arms around as many of them as he could reach, the others pressing close. Forever and always, he agreed. The McGraw Ranch stood solid beneath their feet, rebuilt stronger than before. But the real strength was in the bonds between them, forged in danger, tested by fire, and proven true. They were an unconventional family, perhaps, but a family nonetheless, and in the wild frontier of Texas, where survival meant adaptation and strength came in many forms, they'd carved out their own definition of home, of love, of belonging. As the stars wheeled overhead and the night deepened around them, the McGraw clan stood together, facing whatever future awaited with the same courage that had brought them this far. Together, always together. The beginning of their new life started here, under these stars, with these promises. And somewhere, perhaps, Josiah McGraw was smiling, knowing his legacy lived on not in land or cattle, but in the love that filled his old home with new light. Thank you for listening to this Wild West love story. Dear audience, I'm curious to know where you're enjoying this tale. Are you listening while driving through the countryside, relaxing at home, or perhaps during your daily commute? Please subscribe to the From Wild West channel and share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think about the McGraw family's unconventional journey and where in the world you're joining us from. Your comments and discussions make our storytelling community special.